Question for you. What is the most important console of all time? Seriously, think about it for a second. Over the last 5 decades, there have been dozens, if not hundreds of different consoles, and you could probably make an argument for the importance of quite a few. But today, I want to argue my case for what the 5 most important actually are. And I think we should start way, way back. Forget ray tracing, forget teraflops, we need to talk about the Magnavox Odyssey, the granddaddy of consoles. This came out back in 1972. To put that in perspective, when my first console, the PlayStation 1, came out, the Odyssey was already 22 years old. Dude, the Odyssey came out 3 years after the moon landing, which may be more impressive that we landed on the moon before we invented video games. As the first commercially available home video game console, calling it primitive doesn't even begin to cover it. We're talking about 2 squares of light on a TV screen, with plastic overlays you tape to your TV to create graphics. No sound, no scorekeeping, no color, but importantly, it was an actual interactive gaming system for the home. The story behind it is wild too. Ralph Baer, the guy who invented this thing, was working as a military contractor when he had this crazy idea for a TV game box. He worked on it in secret, even borrowing a technician to help him build prototypes. When he finally showed his boss, they were so impressive they made it an official project. $2,000 and months of development later, they created this.
Entertain themselves with Odyssey.
Okay, wish us luck. We are mostly set up, so I have controllers connected, we have our game cord. I will say, we do not have a great success rate when it comes to older consoles because between getting them to work via VHF, coax, I don't know, 50 years of potential things to go wrong, I'm not 100% sure this is gonna work. I think it will, but we did purchase this untested. So I'm gonna start loading my batteries. Oh boy, this looks very tight. Holy. Oh my God, listen to that funk. All right, let's hope that this actually works. Wait, is this on the right channel?
3.
Channel 3. Channel 3, yeah, I think so.
Huh. Okay.
This was untested, wasn't it?
This was untested.
Maybe. We should have picked the Atari 2600 for this one. How much did I pay for my complete Box Odyssey?
I'm pretty sure you paid $450.
You know, what's $450 for the price of history? Am I right?
Yeah, this is a great museum piece. It's gonna go right into our museum.
It's gonna go right in the museum, unplugged, and functional theoretically. Well, now how am I gonna play roulette?
Vegas?
All right. Fast forward to the late 1980s, and Nintendo absolutely owned gaming. Now most people have heard the story of the NES and how Nintendo helped to revive video games, but it's easy to forget what happened afterward. They won and they kind of just called it a day. What the world needed was real competition to push things forward. And boy oh boy did Sega deliver with the Genesis. This was the dawn of the first console war. Marketing was the name of the game, and Sega didn't hold anything back. Genesis does what Nintendo don't, and so much more. Really solidified Sega as the cool, edgy alternative to Nintendo's safe, family-friendly image. You want blood in your Mortal Kombat like the arcades? Well, yeah, you wanted Genesis, baby. The story really is in the sales. In Japan, the Sega Mega Drive only sold about 3.6 million units compared to a whopping 17 million Nintendo Super Famicoms. But globally, Sega really gave Nintendo a run for the money, with 31 million units versus the Super Nintendo's 49 million. Not only was this impressively close given Nintendo's dominance up until that point, but the real legacy was how it forced everyone to fight, and fight hard. God, what a banger! The Genesis was the console that you had if you were cool and you ate bugs and slime. And the Super Nintendo is what you had if your mom made you eat your mac and cheese and clean the whole bowl every time. Psst.
What if you ate both?
So the thing with the Genesis is that it really pushed Nintendo to move forward. Now, obviously, I don't have some kind of like magic ball to figure out what would have happened if Sega had not pushed so hard, but in my opinion, Nintendo were just kind of resting on their laurels with the NES, because let's not forget that the playbook had not been established yet on what a console generation really looked like. I mean, sure, you go back to like the Atari days where, you know, they would bring out a 2600 and blah, 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 but like, it was not the established idea that you would buy a console and then 4 to 5 years later, there would be the sequel. But when Sega came out with the Genesis a few years after the NES, I think it really sort of woke Nintendo up to the fact that they really needed to think about what that successor was, which of course was the Super Nintendo, and by all means, a very successful console. But the Genesis was not only what pushed the industry forward, but importantly, it really pushed the idea of a console war. They're literally like, hey, you Nintendo, we're cool. You got your stupid Mario plumber. Look at this. Sonic is tapping his foot right now because he is so bored of sitting still. He's gotta go fast. Mario's gotta, this is the peak, and we're just gonna stay here on the mountaintop and not worry about what happened after, which was bad things. Almost exclusively bad things. The PlayStation 2 isn't just important, it is the king of gaming consoles. As of 2025, it is the highest selling console of all time at over 160 million units sold. It's held the record for over a decade and 3 console generations. There is just so much to unpack that I've made an entire video just on the PS2's legacy, but here are just a couple of the reasons why I really believe the PS2 deserves its spot on this list. From the get-go, Sony just had everything working in their favor this time around. The original PlayStation's momentum, combined with launching the PS2 a full year before most of its competitors, really helped the new console. But what made the PS2 truly revolutionary wasn't just its gaming capabilities. It was Sony's decision to make it a DVD player. Because remember, this was 2000. DVD players were still expensive luxury items, often costing $400 to $500 or more. Sony launched the PS2 at $299, cheaper than most standalone DVD players, and you just happened to get what would become the most popular gaming console ever as a bonus. Parents who would never consider buying a game machine suddenly saw the PS2 as an essential piece of home entertainment. On top of that, Sony kept making PS2s until 2013. That is 13 years of production. They were still making PS2s the year the PS4 launched, and that longevity is absolutely unheard of in gaming. The game library was also legitimately insane. We're talking about Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, Final Fantasy X, Gran Turismo 4, Metal Gear Solid 2, Guitar Hero, God of War, Shadow of the Colossus. I mean, look, these are some of the greatest games of all time. That's not good. That's not what's supposed to happen there. What? This console not only pushed the envelope when it came to graphics, the jump from PS1 to PS2, I still believe is one of the most absolutely unbelievably huge jumps in any 2 console generations ever. Now, part of that was just simply the fact that the PS2, it had the benefit of technology. Like the PS1 was good, but it was such an early 3D console. With the PS2, I mean, this is an open world game. Imagine an open world game on the PS1 that didn't look like 3 polygons glued together, right? Like it would just be absolutely ridiculous. Look at that. Like honestly.
Lens flare.
What a moment for a game to start with just this beautiful lens flare and the realization that you can go anywhere. This game gave you so much freedom, and the PS2 generation is really where GTA went from being this like obscure, like sort of top, like down, sort of generic game that no one really cared about, to being the absolute juggernaut that it is today. Obviously, some of the later titles like GTA 4 and GTA 5 on the PS3 and the 360 were important, but like this was where the format for the open world game really came in. God, this is still fun. Look how like absurdly fast I'm going on this thing. Like I'm doing like 70 miles an hour on this bike right now, and it is great. Sometimes the most important consoles in history are important for all the wrong reasons. The Xbox One didn't just fail. It catastrophically showed what not to do with a console launch, and I'd argue that it lost Xbox the most important generation as gamers made the transition from physical to digital. Coming off the Xbox 360, Microsoft should have been unstoppable. The 360 had gone toe-to-toe with the PS3, Xbox Live was the gold standard for online gaming, and franchises such as Halo and Gears of War were at their peak. Microsoft had everything they needed to win the generation. Instead, they delivered one of the most tone-deaf product launches in history. Mandatory online connection, can't share games. I mean, what were they thinking? The backlash was swift and absolute, and Xbox was eviscerated by the very community that they had so carefully cultivated. They did eventually reverse pretty much all the controversial decisions, but at that point the damage was done. The PS4 outsold the Xbox One by more than 2 to 1, and Xbox has never recovered that market share. Now, the Xbox One's legacy isn't really what it accomplished so much as how its failure shaped everything that came after. It's a reminder that no company, no matter how successful, is immune to completely misreading their audience. I could spend an entire video, in fact, I have made an entire video talking about why and how the Xbox One failed. There's so much to go in here between Microsoft's incredible hubris in thinking that people wanted a television and media first machine and games second, the fact that they made a horrible miscalculation when it came to the spec of this by giving it a much slower setup of RAM compared to the PS4, thinking they would have some kind of advantage, which they did not. They have a much smaller GPU because they thought that they were not gonna have as much memory. Like, there's so many things that, in hindsight, absolutely doomed the Xbox One. So there were a number of good games for the Xbox One. Forza Motorsport 5, I think, was actually one of the slightly underrated ones. This is one of the launch titles, as well as like Rise Son of Rome. Not too far after the Xbox One came out, there was Titanfall, which was one of the games that I actually really enjoyed. Look at how beautiful this looks. There's so much that they did right with the Xbox, which is really what like makes it so sad, because the Xbox, in many ways, was ahead of its time. I mean, yeah, there's definitely some dumb things they did. Like, there's absolutely no scenario which they should have made Kinect mandatory. Like, I get it. Like, the Kinect was popular on the Xbox 360, but it was popular because there's all these, like, fun, like, silly games. They tried to make it a mandatory thing the same way that, you know, Nintendo made the motion controls mandatory on the Wii, but it was so expensive, and nothing ever really used Kinect in the way that you would really think. Like, I know for me, I mostly just use Kinect to, like, tell my TV to turn on and turn off. I mean, there were things that I did like about the Xbox One, namely the fact that you actually could do multitasking on it. So I remember there was the ability to run like 2 apps at the same time. So for example, like I could be racing in like Forza or like playing Titanfall or whatever, and like watching a Twitch stream on the side. But unfortunately, a lot of that feature has been sort of stripped out over the years. Like, it's not all bad. I think that's the thing that I really want to say. Like, was this an incredibly dangerous generation for Microsoft to lose? Absolutely. Are they in large part in the predicament that they're in when it comes to console sales because of this? Yes. But you can look at it from the bright side, and that the Xbox One did force Microsoft to be far more ambitious when it came to the things they did. I have a little bit of a soft spot for the Xbox One, but I mean, there's no doubt that while I think this is an important console, sadly, it's important for all of the wrong reasons. Before we get to our number one console, I have one honorable mention. Here's a little riddle for you. What device is smaller than an original Game Boy, more expensive than a PS5, and has generated more gaming revenue than PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo combined? Your smartphone. Now look, I know what you're thinking. Smartphones aren't real gaming consoles. And yes, I would actually agree. It's kind of why this is more of like a little bonus to the list. But hear me out. In 2024, the entire traditional gaming console industry generated about $50 billion of revenue. That sounds pretty good, until you realize that mobile gaming alone brought in over $90 billion. We're not just talking about a bigger slice of the pie. I mean, mobile gaming is the pie at this point. For example, one of the most popular mobile games right now is Monopoly Go, and that has already brought in over $2.5 billion by itself. I think that sounds like too much money, if I'm honest with you. People often credit the PS2 as the console that brought gaming to the mainstream. And it definitely did that for a whole new generation, but if we're being real, the rise of smartphones and mobile gaming sort of made gaming accessible to everyone. The real mainstream is when Grandma kicks your ass at Pokemon Go. Now, if you want to learn more about the absolute absurdity of mobile gaming, definitely be sure to subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments. It's a video that I've wanted to do for a very long time now, because honestly, the more you look at mobile gaming, the more the entire space is absolutely bananas, not the Donkey Kong kind. Speaking of Donkey Kong, this next console will look just a little bit familiar. Not only do I think that the Nintendo Switch deserves a place on this list, I think as time goes on, it'll prove to be a contender for the single most important console of all time. After the catastrophic failure of the Wii U, Nintendo was in need of a miracle. Enter the Nintendo Switch in one of the biggest comeback stories in gaming history. The Switch represented an absolutely massive gamble for Nintendo. They were essentially killing off two separate profitable product lines, which were their home consoles and their portable systems, just to bet everything on this hybrid concept. But clearly, 153 million units sold and counting later, people understood the assignment. Nintendo ran back part of the old Game Boy playbook that most of the rest of the industry had just simply forgotten. People valued flexibility more than raw power. The Switch's influence extends far beyond its own success. It single-handedly revived interest in portable gaming after nearly a decade of the smartphone supposedly killing the dedicated handheld. between the Steam Deck, ROG Xbox Ally, Legion Go, and even the rumored Sony PS6 Portable, I personally don't think that any of these would exist without the Switch proving that there was still a massive market for premium portable gaming. I think it should say a lot about the Switch that while this is an 8-year-old console, not only has it never seen a price cut, it just saw a price increase. So the Switch is now more expensive today in 2025 than it was at launch in 2017 or at any point through its history. Now you might say that that's a little bit of a weird move for Nintendo to do, but I think it really just goes to show how incredibly successful it is. That even though the Switch 2 exists, they are still selling, what, like 1 million Switches every quarter? Like, this thing is still flying, well, not flying, but like, it's still moving itself off shelves. And that, I think, says a lot about just how important and just how great the Switch really is. I know that including the Switch on this list is going to be controversial. Like, I fully know that that is going to be a thing that most people are not going to agree with. But to me, I think as time goes on, the Switch is only going to be proven to be more and more important. Like, this thing does so many things so well right out the gate. And there's also just the simple fact that the Switch is a lovely device to play on. Like, I can just pick this thing up, slide my Joy-Cons on, which also Joy-Cons, shout out to, hey, actually being cool and useful, and boom, I'm now instantly playing my game, no question. You can rotate the Joy-Cons on their side and they become like 2 individual controllers. Like, there are so many smart decisions that Nintendo made. And they ultimately did improve the Switch as well. Not only with the Red Box, which came out a couple years after it first launched, which gave a dramatic improvement to battery life. The Switch Lite, which I still say is one of my favorite consoles of all time, just personally speaking. $200, or used to be $200. That will give you the full Switch experience in a tiny little package. Even the Switch OLED, which is ludicrously expensive today, but it took the same package and gave it a much better kickstand and importantly, a far better display. But that, my friends, is a look at some of the most important consoles of all time. I'm curious, which one of these consoles, or maybe a different one, do you think is truly the most important, impactful, and impressive console of all time? If you say the DS Lite, I'll give you a pass. If you say the Game Boy Advance SP, I'll also give you a pass. But if you say the god danged Wonder Swan, you can get yourself out of the comment section right now. Actually, you know what should have been on this list? Xbox 360. That probably should have been on the list. Oh, you know what should really been on the list? NES.
No.
That's gonna be the number one comment. How did you include the NES, you stupid moron? To that I say, well, if we got an NES, that one probably would have worked.